Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, and today we're going to be talking about PlayStation 3 emulation via RPCS3. That is because I've not done 2 but 3 different videos this year talking about different massive updates, bringing in better game compatibility and better performance across basically every bit of hardware out there. And honestly, it feels like the RPCS3 dev team is trying to speedrun PlayStation 3 emulation in 2026. And honestly, in general, between decomps, recomps, PC ports, and emulation updates, even having a PlayStation 5 emulator in experimental functionality out there, 2026 is absolutely the year where retro is just having huge strides in emulation. I absolutely love to see that. So I'm going to be talking about the big updates with RPCS3 and just exactly how good this emulation has gotten. And don't worry about those hitches there. I was basically trying to break the emulation for a test, which you'll be seeing on the channel in a little bit. But honestly, RPCS3 always impresses me, always amazes me, and I really am stoked to see just how good it's gotten in 2026 with all the updates we've talked about and the ones we're going to be talking about here. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, if you haven't played around with PlayStation 3 emulation recently, you 100% owe it to yourself to do so. There's been a lot of improvements and innovations in this year, so basically if you were borderline able to run games at full speed or not, maybe the last couple times you tested it 3-4 months ago, you may actually be getting that locked frame rate that you were always looking for. And if you have some high-end hardware, you're going to be able to dial up RPCS3 well beyond what the actual native resolution and performance was of a PlayStation 3, and in some instances, this is now my preferred way to play these games versus actually using PlayStation 3 hardware. It's just one of those things. Getting better resolutions and higher frame rates is always going to be a win in my book. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you're using RPCS3 or not. I would be curious. And the best part is, outside of all the improvements we've seen this year, which we'll be getting into in just a moment, is just how well the RPCS3 team catalogs all of the different changes and how they're going to benefit you. I would say it's right up there with the Dolphin Emulator team when it comes to notating changes. They even make YouTube videos showing off the small minute differences that basically make a small difference in a game towards accuracy, because sometimes you're not really sure where those things are. But if you want to go over to RPCS3's YouTube page, as I'm showing here briefly, you will see that they will update you both visually as well as in text of everything that's happening, because something like Sonic All-Star Racing always worked in RPCS3, just had a few graphical bugs, but now those are going to be entirely cleaned up, and that's something we've already talked about. But the point I'm trying to get into before we go for the rest of the video is just how dedicated the RPCS3 team is when it comes to PlayStation 3 emulation. And for the longest time, compatibility was good, but it just hit a milestone that we're going to be talking about. Because don't forget, the PlayStation 3 library is quite large, not only with games that came on disc, something that Sony will no longer allow us to do. Unfortunately, that sucks for us. But now 75% of all PlayStation 3 games are now playable in RPCS3. That doesn't mean they boot. That means you can play them and basically have a good time with it. So think of it that way. 3/4 of the entire PlayStation 3 library in RPCS3 can now be played by anyone with a PC that will run them. And that is just absolutely huge. That is 3/4 of the way for the entirety of the library of everything that existed on PS3, whether it was a downloadable game, whether it was something that came on a disc. If you can run it on PlayStation 3, now 75% of that can be emulated on RPCS3, and that's just straight up amazing. And the other 25%, it's not like you can't get into the game for the most part. You may just have an issue where it freezes. Something like 3D Dot Game here, which I'll show you in a moment, it's one of those games. Let's do the first of 2 soundtrack samples just because I can make you listen to music in Katamari, and I'll be right back with a lot more news. So in the instance of something like Katamari Forever on RPCS3, throwing it at a very mid-tier setup like the Steam machine, I was getting 100% perfect frame rates, where before, maybe that wouldn't be possible because there's been a lot of innovations around the SPU, finding patterns and getting efficiencies to performance in 2026. And that really does make a big difference, because that means that benefits everybody. If you have an absolute god-tier PC, you'll still get better performance off those, and if you have something that is like an advanced modern-day potato that could get close to running games in full speed, now you might actually get there. If we take a look at the compatibility list here, you're going to see 75.33% of all games can be completed with comparable performance and no game-breaking glitches. In-game means that they're going to either have a glitch or a crash that's going to prevent you from playing them. Intro means that you can't actually get past the menu, and not loadable whatsoever, that's at 0.06%. So basically, over 75% of the library cannot only be played, you can play it from start to finish so long as you have a PC that'll handle it, and you will be good to go. And some things feel like they're very close to being added to that list, because something like 3D.Game Hero, I have a save file that's like 2.5 hours in, and I have not yet suffered a crash. I'm sure it's in there. The team definitely knows better than I do what is 100% playable or not. But honestly, I feel like this number is going to jump up, maybe by like another 5% by the year's end. But don't forget, sometimes things take a long time those last few games, so it might be 1, 2, 3, 5, even 10 years before this emulator actually hits 100% playability for every single piece of software that ever existed on PlayStation 3. Because sometimes some games do things with the hardware that are so weird or undocumented it can be kind of the final boss of emulation. Take a look at Factor 5 games for the Dolphin emulator team, and you know exactly why sometimes things can take an eternity to actually even become playable, and an even longer eternity to actually become fun to play. But honestly, even if this game does crash, when it is running, it is spectacular, it's outstanding. If you've never played 3D.Game Heroes before, I can't recommend it enough. You definitely have to check this one out. And going back to that compatibility tracker, you can basically check to see if a game's going to run before you try to. And I definitely recommend that if you have your heart set on playing a specific game, go ahead in here and make sure it is playable, because everything you're seeing right now is only in-game, which means you really wouldn't want to spend too much time trying to actually sit down and enjoy it. Something like Heavy Rain, you're not going to be able to beat the game. But that, honestly, in and of itself, isn't that big of a deal, because it'll definitely get there. And in all the updates I've talked about, honestly, the team just keeps continually making this thing better and better, and that's something that I love to see, because I hadn't tried to emulate Uncharted for a long time, and honestly, the last time I took a look at it, I think it crashed within like a minute, and that was probably years and years and years ago, maybe even before I had a YouTube channel. But now if you want to jump into Uncharted, it just seems to work very close to perfect. Now don't forget, playable does not mean perfect. That means you could still get a hitch here or there, you could still get a slight visual glitch, but you're going to be able to enjoy the game. But just keep your expectations in check, because of course RPCS3 is still in very active development, and the next update could actually have a regression that makes a game go from the playable list to the in-game list, because until the developers say they are done with everything and 100% of things work and they no longer have to update the emulator, regressions can and will happen. So if you're midway through a long game that you want to finish in RPCS3 that's marked as playable, then definitely don't update until you actually finish that game, because it is rare, but sometimes regressions do happen, and they always seem to happen at the worst of times. Something like Virtua Fighter 5 here, not the version I would pick to play if I want to play Virtua Fighter 5, because of course we have more modern versions, but an excellent test of the performance and latency, because if there was any latency in the controls here that would affect the gameplay, it would be instantaneously noticeable by me, a huge fan of the franchise. And that really is the other main takeaway. A lot of these improvements haven't just made games run better, they've made them feel better so long as you have the hardware to accommodate for it. It's also going to be the second soundtrack sample in the video, just because I love the music and you can hear how good of the audio quality is coming through on something like RPCS3, so listen, and I'll be right back.
Fight one! Ready? Go! KO! Fight two! Ready?
So in 2026, RPCS3 has had so many fundamental updates, the big ones I've done videos on, and a couple of small ones which I didn't, that brought the emulation compatibility to 75% of the entire library. We're talking PAL, North America, Japanese regions, we're talking disc versus online only, and I feel like maybe by 2030 that number might be hovering around 90%. RPCS3 is an amazing emulator. If you need an RPCS3 guide or RPCS3 tutorial, check my channels, and I'll have some more content on it on the Steam machine in the future, because that thing has been proving to be an emulation monster, even if it is a couple $100 more than I would have liked to have paid for it. But short of that, if you haven't updated RPCS3 in like 6 months to a year, you 100% owe it to yourself to grab the most recent update. It is just that much better, and better is always something that we always want in emulation. But short of that, we're done. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.